name is Natasha Marling, and today I'm going to talk to you about digital storytelling. And in this context, this is going to be a formative assessment to measure students' understanding of text read about artists' lives, and then we're going to incorporate literacy into this high school art class. So the first thing that I want to do is describe the instrument, aka tell you what the project's going to be about. So first, students will read a biographical article or book about an artist of their choice. And they may be working in pairs on this, and I'll get to that a little later in the presentation, but they'll still have freedom of choice with that. Students will then create a digital story based off the life of their artist using either PowerPoint, VoiceThread, Prezi, or a YouTube video. After that, students will share their historically based stories with the class. Students will show the comprehension of what they've read, as well as their ability to create their own story based off of it and present it in a digital way. Including original artwork to assist with telling the story will be required, and that's more on the art side than on the literacy side, so I'm not going to focus on that much in this presentation, but that's something I did want to put in for the art side of what we're doing today. Now, here I have a rubric for how the project will be graded. And this rubric is focused on the literacy portion of the project and the creation of the actual story. And as you can see, I have what would be an A, B, and a C for each one of the following categories. The story, is it clear and focused? The use of the images and media, do they help create an atmosphere or a tone that matches the story? The economy, does the story include the right amount of information? Is it overloaded? Is it too sparse? We have to think about that. The emotional content, does the story engage the reader? Does it engage the emotions of the person who created it? And then also they will create a reflection in which they reflect on the experience of creating their digital story. And you can see here I have for an A, B, and a C. We're just gonna hope they don't get lower than that. But I actually did get this rubric offline, and I have the source for that at the end of the presentation. Now we're gonna talk about some pros of this type of assessment from a literacy standpoint. Firstly, students are encouraged to understand the text on a deep level because they're going to be required to retell it in a story format. Also, students will be in control of how to present their project, and I think that student choice really helps students feel motivated because when they're in control, they feel like they are more responsible for the outcome of the project. Students will also learn how to use digital tools. Ideally, the students will have a cursory knowledge of the format they choose to present their story in, but I'm pretty well versed on all of those different formats, so hopefully I would be able to help them with any questions they have, or I could help them research to figure out how to answer those questions. Students will also be able to communicate with multiple forms, including sound, visual, and textual communication. And I think that's a key point in making this a valuable project because it kind of comes from different angles with the different types of literacy. Okay, there are a few cons to this type of literacy assessment. First, the teacher's not going to be reading the text with the student. And this is a con because the teacher will not be able to identify comprehension problems during the reading process. However, I don't think it's a huge deal because I do have some ideas for solutions. So to combat this problem, students could work with a partner and research the same artist and then discuss what they read before writing their story. So that's where the partner part comes in, and I think this would be really helpful because if one student was confused about what they read, they could discuss it with their partner and then hopefully gain some clarification. Or if they were unable to really understand it, their partner would be able to be like, hey, my partner doesn't understand, we need help, and I could go over and assist them with the text. Another thing that I thought could combat this problem is the teacher could have the students record and digitally submit a retelling of what they read to help check comprehension before they begin the actual storytelling part of the assignment. And I think this would be a good check. And this also ties into some reading I did about this assignment, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So here we go, reading that I did about this type of assessment. So I read The World of Digital Storytelling by Oler, and this article discussed how digital storytelling is important to focus on creating the story first. So a quote that I pulled from this article says, 2 important components of my approach to teaching storytelling are story mapping and practicing written and oral storytelling before bringing in digital elements. And based off this article, I thought about the opportunity to work on oral storytelling when they did the retelling of what they read and recorded it to be reviewed by the teacher, because that right there is going to help them figure out in their head what stands out to them, what is the most important part, because when they recite it orally, they'll hear themselves, they'll know what they're thinking, and I think that will help. And then students will be creating their story based off of the biographical text that they read. And I also think this idea of story mapping is something that I would want them to do, kind of create a rough outline of important points of the story before they begin trying to create the digital story. Another thing that I read that has to do with this type of assessment was from the book Reading, Writing, and Literacy 2.0, which I read in a previous class. And this book discusses digital storytelling formats that you can use. And this is where I got the idea to use VoiceThread. That was a program I wasn't really familiar with before reading this article, or this book. And I pulled out a quote, and it says, when viewers integrate the three sources of information, photo, caption, and audio message, they have a deeper understanding than if they only had a picture. And that ties back to what I was saying a minute ago about how it's really important that they're using text, they're using visual, they're using audio. By using all three of those different things in combination, I feel they can really get across their understanding, even if maybe like text isn't their strength. I still think they could tell a good story with this type of a format. So digital storytelling is a great way to assess students' reading comprehension because of the multimodality of digital storytelling. The students are able to fully express their comprehension of the text. So they will just be able to tell me everything they know, hopefully, because they'll have multiple options of ways to explain themselves. Now, I have an example here in the PowerPoint of a digital story. I'm not going to open the link right now, but this is a link to a story created about one of Vincent van Gogh's painting. This will be an excellent example to use with my students when introducing the idea of digital storytelling. If you would like to check this out, you can just open the PowerPoint and follow the link for yourself. Now, I'm also working with a student on a case study, and here I've tried to tie this project in with the case study that we're doing. I didn't have time to do this full project with the student that I'm working with, but I did want to modify the assignment so that I could sort of have something tied in. So what I did with my student was we read an interview about a lumberjack, and I had my student draw pictures of himself as a lumberjack in the future, and I encouraged him to include details that showed what his life would be like if he was a lumberjack. And these details were things that he learned from reading the interview. So one of the first things we learned is that lumberjacks get up really early. So he drew a little picture of himself waking up at 3 a.m. And then he would go to the woods and cut down trees. But he would have to be very careful not to let a log fall and crush him, because we read about how being a lumberjack is one of the most dangerous jobs in America. So we can kind of see here how he took something that was in a verbal form or a written form and turned it into a visual form with pictures. And I thought that really tied in with this whole idea of digital storytelling as well, and using the multiple different forms of literacy. Then I also have a slide here that talks about how this is related to grade level equivalence. So the rubric for this assessment is not a norm reference instrument. Instead, it's focused on the different aspects of the assignment and what level each one of those aspects should be at to get an A. So each dimension of the assignment is placed on a rating scale based on the description of that part of the assignment. So because of that, it's not really easily translated into grade level equivalents, such as this would be the work of a 9th grader versus the work of a 12th grader, which honestly, we usually don't have grade level equivalents that much in a high school art class, because the classes are mixed and we have 9 through 12 in the same class. And they're all expected to work to an Art 1 level A, not necessarily a grade level. One downside to this, to teachers using this assessment, they need to ensure not to be biased because of the rubric. It takes a lot of the teacher sort of knowing the student to be able to place them correctly on that rubric. So teachers need to watch out not to be biased towards the students positively or negatively when using the rubric and grading these digital storytelling assignments. Okay, so instructional implications. After completing the assignment with my students, I will be able to judge their comprehension of the text they read about their selected artist from the quality of the story they produced. If they produced a well-written story that was interesting, that met all the requirements on the rubric, I would know that they understood the original text that they read. However, if the students were not able to produce an effective story after reading the text, I would realize the text was either too difficult, they did not internalize it, or they were not comfortable with the digital format. So if this happened, I would give the students an option to present in a not digital format first to see if maybe it was the digital tools that were standing in their way of success. Then if they were unable to complete the assignment with just like drawing and writing, then I would judge that the story was too difficult for them, and I would assign a less challenging text for them to complete the assignment. And here are my sources. And I know you might not be able to see them that well on this board, but I also have the PowerPoint that you guys can look at on your own time to kind of get more information. So thank you so much for watching my presentation.